morning, depending on where you are, maybe good evening. Welcome to this exciting session today on corporate learning and development at the Boston Consulting Group. This session will be recorded. I know that a number of people have signed up. They typically watch the recorded session. For those of you who are live today here, it's an opportunity to ask questions actually to the guest speaker today. Please use the chat room for that. And then we will kick it off. I'm dialing in, not from California today, though so some of you might recognize the wonderful bridge, but this morning I looked at some newspapers, and as you probably know, there are huge fires in California, and the color of the bridge was kind of orange, almost red actually, so very unusual. But I still have the clear bridge behind me. So today, I will introduce my guest actually in a couple of minutes. We will have an exciting topic, but before I go to turn it over to Elena, I want to make you aware of a couple of things. One is, you know, I'm welcoming you from IE University in Madrid. For those of you who are new to IE University, IE is one of the most international universities in Madrid. Close to 85% of our students are international students. We have a number of schools. We have bachelor, master programs, executive programs, and close to 10,000 students. Over the last couple of months, I have published a couple of articles with friends of mine. One on the right side, a very important topic also when you are in this session today, when we look at the big transformation from live classroom learning into high quality digital learning. So one article that you might be interested in. And another one is learning philosophy, liquid learning. How can we deliver learning in a world that is changing all the time? And how can we support actually our employees in a way that they can build capabilities at the time they need it? Liquid learning in times of liquid modernity. And you can download actually the articles from the IE University portal. We will show that at the end. In terms of, you know, this webinar is hosted by our Center for Corporate Learning Innovation. And I will turn it over briefly to my colleague and friend Christina, who will share very briefly in terms of what we are doing. So Christina, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Nick. So yes, the Center for Corporate Learning Innovation, it's a tool to build a community on the L&D field. And we are building that community with more than 2,000 members already among professionals, academia, and students, thanks to providing tools that are useful for all of you, hopefully, like this monthly webinar that you are witnessing and that are being recorded, and you can take a look at them afterwards in the website that you have on the chat. We also have free assessments to test yourself on different issues like authentic professional confidence or your mindset of lifelong learners. Or we also have the news section and the publications, as Nick is mentioning. We are talking about liquid learning, the new methodology to work if you have to work in a synchronous mode, if you have hybrid classes, if you have to provide content to on-the-job students all at once, as we are all facing. And this is it. We would like to welcome you to the webinar and also to see you around on the website. Thanks so much, Nick.
Thanks, Christina. And this for, you know, learning professionals who are dialing in today. You know, when I spoke about blended learning and high quality learning, learning journeys, there's one program that will start actually, as you see on the screen, in a couple of weeks from now. It's an amazing program, the International Masterclass Learning and Development Leadership. This is a 10-month learning journey with only 2 moments when people are together. This class will start with 24 candidates from 11 different countries. We have 2 slots left, so if you are interested, you can still sign up for this amazing program. And finally, there will be more webinars, as Christina has mentioned. I'm delighted to welcome Elliot Maisy in October, Jackie Bressi in November, and then we have Simon from Novartis in December to talk about learning at Novartis. So that's basically the plan for the rest of the year. So hopefully we will see you. Now I will start turning it over to the guest of today, who will start sharing her presentation. Elena from BCG. And Elena has a fantastic career. She has been in corporate organizations, including at Coca-Cola, but also she has been with now with BCG for almost well, a little bit more than 15 years as the director of a Center of Excellence, client learning and enablement. So really focusing on a client capability building in organizations. Elena is has a bachelor degree she's from Russia, from Moscow State University in math and statistics. She has an MBA from a wonderful school, University of Virginia. And it has been a real pleasure that also Elena has been one of the participants of our international masterclass that I was just referring to, and an alum of the program, and she will also annually join our alum event that we are holding for all the people who have been part of the program. Elena lives in the United States. She recently moved to Atlanta, wonderful place as well. And with that, I'm delighted and I want to thank Elena for being with us today to talk about all the amazing insights she has in capability building in organizations, what is so incredibly important. And I know there will be a lot of takeaways for all of us. And so again, please use the chat room for any questions you have, because we have carved out some time at the end to take a number of your questions. So with that, Elena, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nick. It's really an honor to be here today and to speak to all of you. Before I jump into the presentation, I wanted to say that a couple of years ago, I attended the Leadership Development Masterclass with Nick, and this was an amazing experience. So I highly recommend the program. Okay, so today I wanted to speak to all of you about a very exciting topic, the topic of future of corporate learning. And I will skip my intro. I think Nick did me good justice to my experience. I lead a Center for Client Learning and Enablement within BCG, and what we do is we focus on developing best practice learning and enablement solutions that we then help implement in a variety of client organizations. So the topic of today is the future of corporate learning, which is a very exciting and top of mind topic for all professionals, not only learning professionals actually. So as we all know that business world is changing at an exponential rate, and there are multiple forces at play, and organizations, all organizations need to find ways to succeed in this changing environment. So the basis of competition has been shifting from positional advantage when companies compete on price, quality, economies of scale, to adaptive advantage, ability to work in agile ways, innovative ways, adopt new approaches and respond to changing market needs. And what's happening recently is that a new basis of competition has emerged, and we call it learning advantage. So given the speed at which jobs and roles and skills are changing, organizations must learn how to learn at speed and at scale. And at BCG, we believe that the winners of tomorrow will be those that can accelerate their rate of learning. So today I wanted to focus on two topics. I want to talk about three forces that are shaping the future of corporate learning. And I want to offer a few strategies that organizations can use to accelerate their rate of learning. So there are three forces that are shaping the future of corporate learning. And I will talk about each of them in a little bit of detail. So one is global skills mismatch. The second one is continuous evolution of jobs and skills. And the third one is shift from face-to-face to virtual, which was triggered by the recent pandemic. So at BCG, we have done a research that revealed the phenomenon that we call a global skills mismatch. A conclusion from that study was that there are about 1.3 billion people in the world that are currently in jobs that are either they're overqualified for or underqualified for. So the mismatch effectively affects 1 out of every 3 employees globally and costs about $5 trillion to the global economy. Safe to say that this problem affects every organization in some shape and form. And part of this problem is structural, but a large part of this problem is due to lack of upskilling and reskilling opportunities to meet the evolving market needs that will fall on the shoulders of corporations that are trying to compete for talent. In addition to global skills mismatch, we see an accelerating change in roles and skills. We estimate that about the skills, the half-life of skills today is less than 5 years. So the skills are becoming increasingly obsolete. And in the next 2 to 5 years, about 60% of workforce will need to be upskilled or reskilled. And it is a daunting task. And if that was not enough, COVID-19 threw another wrench into the labor market problem. And you know what happened? We all know what happened, right? Over 300 million people had to transition to working remotely, literally overnight. We believe that that force alone has catapulted companies 3 to 5 years into the digital future, forcing them to rethink the work on a whole new level. And design rapid response initiatives to develop a new set of skills. So to sum up, organizations are under enormous pressure to upskill and reskill employees at speed and at scale. And given the complexity of the problem, there's really no silver bullet approach. So in this session, I wanted to focus on some strategies that organizations can use to accelerate their rate of learning. But before we go into the second part of the presentation, I wanted to run a quick poll and understand where your organizations are and which specific challenges you are encountering. So I'll pull up a poll on the screen and you can punch in your answer. Okay. So this is very interesting. So I see that some people are still punching in the answers. So what we saw in the first 3 months of the pandemic is that there was a huge focus on building immediate kind of new set of skills to equip people to work remotely and maintain productivity in this new environment. But 6 months in, the outlook has shifted towards medium term and longer term. So we all understand that, you know, we're in a new normal, and that's here to stay. So a lot of the organizations are thinking about, you know, how they're rethinking their L&D strategy, and they are like focusing on figuring out solutions to build, you know, talent, skills, you know, in the medium term, and prepare for the future. So it's very consistent with what we see across our clients. Okay, so we will move to the strategies to accelerate learning. So there are 5 strategies that I wanted to talk about today. The first one is knowing the skills that will be required for the future. The second one is around designing scalable learning solutions. The third one is reinforcing learning on the job. The fourth one is building continuous learning ecosystems. And then the last one is making learning a C-suite priority. So starting from the first one. So at BCG, we've been talking for some time about what we call the rise of the bionic company, the innovative fusion of human and machine in the workplace. And much of the discussion to date has been focused on, you know, how machines will replace humans and take over human jobs. But our view, however, is that human talent in the bionic age will be more important than ever. And as companies are tackling the transition into the digital future, they need to identify what skills people will need and help employees to gain those skills. So strategic workforce planning will need to become an ongoing and deliberate process. And speaking of the required skills, of course, it goes without saying that digital skills will continue to trend in the digital future. So roles like product managers, user experience designers, data scientists, cybersecurity engineers, app developers will remain in high demand. That said, unique human skills like communication, leadership, critical thinking, creativity will become increasingly important. Employees who are flexible, adaptable, and able to learn will be at a premium. And key functions where new technologies are being adopted will see significant talent shifts. Like, for example, marketing is becoming rapidly becoming dramatically more analytical and data-oriented function. And by the same token, learning and development will also transform. So L&D organization of the future will be much more learner-centric, data-driven, analytical, and technology-savvy. So the mix of skills required will be very different from what most L&D organizations have today. We see L&D of the future as truly bionic, seamlessly combining deep understanding of ways humans learn with smart technology solutions. So speaking of technologies, I think that's the most exciting part of what's happening now in the L&D space. So let me hit on an important issue that we at BCG have been wrestling with. So traditionally, organizations faced a dilemma. They could either offer rich, contextualized, personalized learning to a small number of people, typically executives or high potentials, or they could offer basic, standardized, and non-contextualized, one-size-fits-all training to large groups. And we call this phenomenon a richness trade-off. And as our understanding of how humans learn evolves and as technologies mature, we see opportunity to break that richness trade-off. So there are many tools in the market now, and that they offer a different kind of experience. So for example, platforms like Minerva, or Foundry, or IE, Wow Room allow for active instructor-led learning online. Platforms like Edcast enable highly personalized, contextualized, and continuous learning at scale. Micro-learning apps like Axonify, or virtual coaching platforms like BetterUp enable embedding learning into the workflow and driving behavioral change at scale. So by combining cutting-edge technologies, you can create immersive, and scalable learning solutions that break reach and richness trade-off. And over the past years, learning science have made a lot of progress in terms of understanding like how people learn. But one thing remains true, right? A key lever in building skills is application in the real context, commonly known as on-the-job learning or learning in the workflow. It is a preferred way of learning for adults, as we know it from our own research. And learning in the workflow has become a little bit of a buzzword in the industry. And at BCG, we designed an approach that we call 5 R's. So the purpose of this framework is to make learning in the workflow more concrete and kind of give it more definition. So there are 5 levers that organizations can use to embed learning in the workflow. And they are relevance, repetition, rhythms and routines, reviews, and recognition. And each of these levers gradually build on each other, helping translate new knowledge into skills, new ways of working, and new behaviors. So I won't go into details of 5 R's, but there is a good BCG publication on this topic for those who are interested in learning more about it. So 5R model is a good segue to the 4th strategy around accelerating learning in the workplace. So building a robust learning ecosystem is proven to bring tangible benefits to organizations, both in terms of productivity and employee engagement. But creating a robust ecosystem is not easy. It takes time, it takes effort. However, in our view, the long-term benefits of creating a truly learning organization offer companies sustainable competitive advantage. So the effort is well worth it. And here I would like to speak from my own experience. So I've been with BCG for over 15 years. And I can honestly say that in these 15 years, I've never had a dull moment because I learned every step of the way. I attribute a lot of my professional growth to learning opportunities that BCG provided. So BCG does have a strong ecosystem that fosters continuous learning. And this ecosystem seamlessly integrates a clear view of what skills are required for each role at each level, project work, formal learning, rich informal learning opportunities. And all of these learning experiences are also tied to our performance development system and recognition and rewards. So if you, for example, apprenticeship is a key skill that is required for all project leaders and line managers. So if you are not hitting a mark on that apprenticeship dimension, your promotion may be delayed or will be delayed, I should say. So, and if I were to pinpoint an engine of this BCG's ecosystem, I would pinpoint growth mindset and learning culture. So those are the 2 elements that make the whole ecosystem work. So growth mindset is an individual attribute that makes people, enables people to take stretch assignments and expand their skill sets over time. And learning culture is that fertile ground that helps individuals grow and evolve. And these elements, in my opinion, make BCG a unique place to work. So we see time and time again that top players in the market are those that integrate learning into their purpose, strategy, mindset, and culture. They consistently prioritize learning, they promote learning, they foster learning from the top all the way down to the front line. They create opportunities for people to learn and grow, and their organizations grow faster as a result. It is a self-reinforcing virtuous cycle that propels organizations to the top of their industries. So given the accelerated pace of change and the mounting pressure to upskill talent at speed and at scale, learning should become a CEO and C-suite priorities. And in many organizations, it's already on the top of CEO agenda. We truly believe that organizations that prioritize learning will unlock an engine of effective change and a catalyst of profitable growth, which is fundamental to the long-term success. So that actually covers the pages that I have. I believe we will share the material. So in the end of this presentation, I have several publications, recent publications from BCG on the topic of learning and development, which is, which covers a variety of topics, anything from like strategic workforce planning and how companies should approach that, to what's happening in the workplace because of the pandemic, to more of the longer term view on where learning and development and corporate learning is going. So I invite everyone to read this at your own time. Okay.
Well, that's very exciting, and thank you so much, Elena, for sharing your insights and key takeaways from your work with clients, but also in terms of the learning culture at BCG. So that's a couple of questions. I take questions from the chat. So all of you, if you are, open the chat, and please feel free to type in any questions. But I will start, Elena, with a few thoughts or a few questions. One is, there are L&D functions who are telling me, Nick, our funding has been reduced, and therefore, we don't know how to, kind of move forward. Any advice you have for if you are in an organization where you have to do more with less? What are some of the practices that you can apply?
Yeah, so I think that's a very true problem for the current time. We've been so at BCG we have moved a lot of our in-person programs that were very costly online. And initial take on that is, if you do it right, it works as well as in-person program, but then you can actually accommodate many more people. And that's exactly the same approach that we are trying to orchestrate on the client side. So there's this new reality in which virtual learning is not an inferior way of learning. It actually can be superior to your in-person programs. And our estimates show that it's at least, 30%, if not more, cost effective if you do it in a more technology-enabled way. Does it resonate with you, Nick?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think also some of the principles you mentioned, right? So how can we make sure that people learn more on the job? Learning in the workflow, right? So I think that's very important, and it also requires organizations to redesign how they work actually. It comes with another kind of an opportunity actually. And of course, digital learning, online learning, the virtual classrooms, there's amazing actually what can be done to make them very effective and efficient. But also that gets me to another question, Elena, is, hopefully, and I don't know when, but hopefully sooner than later, we will, pass actually the COVID time. And then the question is, what will happen actually in organizations? Are we going back to where we have been? Do we stay virtually? But also the question is the live classroom dead? Is it like, do you know what, if you think about professionals, executives, we don't need a classroom experience anymore. Everything will become digital in the future.
So I do think that there is going to be a shift to a new normal. So the mix of live and virtual will be different in the future. With a higher share of virtual learning across all cohorts, and some of the programs that were exclusively live, like for executives, like that will require some adaptation. However, I do think there is high value in classroom learning. It just needs to evolve. Like the classroom needs to have a different value proposition, if you will, right? No one wants to sit in the classroom and listen to 2 hours of lecture. Classroom needs to become much more experiential, focused on group learning, focused on experimental learning in a safe environment, right? Like you bring people together to foster connections, to foster peer-to-peer learning, but not to simply passively listen when one person is talking, right? So that can be done online, and it doesn't even need to be done in a synchronous way. I think what we realized, and personally my opinion, when everything shifted online, we copy-pasted what we used to do in a traditional office environment. Like we put all of the synchronous activities that happened live into the synchronous activities online. And everyone got swamped with back-to-back Zoom calls for months, right? And and there's actually no need, like a lot. And I think now we're finding a new balance where some things get resolved over Slack, over email, or elsewhere in an asynchronous way. The synchronous time is actually saved for higher value-added activities.
Yeah. No, thank you. And it also resonates to me what you mentioned in terms of initially the tendency for everyone to say, well, let's take our 2-day program and now let's turn the 2 days, just make it an online 2-day program. And kind of I spoke about it in my article on how to convert a classroom into high quality online, right? So that's kind of, a lot of us I think have traditionally want to move in that direction, but it's all about a whole new design using insights from pedagogy to do it very differently. Thanks, Elena, for that.
And I would say, like, we need to recognize that some of the constraints that we had in the physical world, they don't apply in the virtual world. And that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
We used to run 2-day conferences with, in-person conferences at BCG. Now they're all in, online. They don't need to stay as 2 full days. They can be spread into 4 half days. They can be done in a very different way. You can actually sort of stretch the boundaries. Budget has always been a huge constraint. Like, how many people can come to these events? Like, we cannot fly everyone to the same location because it's very costly. Well, guess what? You don't have to fly people anymore. You can invite 10 times more people, 100 times more people. The incremental cost is very low. So I think we're still in that, process of recognizing that there are a lot of positives that happened as a result of the pandemic.
Yeah, I can't agree more, Elena. I got a question from Jim Van Hulst, on digital learning as well. And he said, how can you provide elements like network building and building trusts in online programs? Or are we saying, well, you know what, building trust is something, you can only do in a classroom more or less? So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a very valid question, and I think there's some early insights, and we published a paper on building emotional closeness in the virtual world. So on one hand, of course, nothing can truly replace, being in the same room with other people. Like you have that better connection, like when you are in person. But if you relax certain kind of assumptions around virtual and allow more of the organic conversation online, I think it can be pretty effective, right? It comes down to how you run those virtual sessions and what type of interaction you orchestrate or allow. So, at BCG, we started doing many more like virtual, coffee chats and I don't know, things that are very informal in nature. And, you actually build good connection with people. One other thing that I noticed, the access to senior people became much easier, right? So you can now reach people who you couldn't reach before because they were on planes or elsewhere. But now everyone is there. So it's easier to grab time. And then one other insight that was mentioned in a publication that BCG did before, when you're online and you're in your own home, like you break that formal boundary. Like you can see my room, right? You can see the picture of my kids and whatever. Like you understand much better who I am than when I'm in the office, like all formal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, indeed. I think there's also kind of, you get, look into somebody's home and I think also, Elena, and all of us listening and reflecting on the question, I think obviously it's very hard to build trust in a 1 hour session of 1 hour, 1 hour session. But I think if we have a learning journey, and people will be in, 10 or 15 virtual sessions, we can start with, what are some of the guiding principles for making the program successful, right? So typically what we do in a classroom. And then it's also about, being open and respect different opinions in the room. And basically what we do in a classroom, we can mirror actually also virtually. And as a consequence, connecting people also one-on-one, we can have, we can open a dialogue on topics that, we also open in a classroom. So, but it requires, of course, well thought through design of virtual sessions. Elena, you started actually the presentation with, skills for the future. And also there are typically students who are listening or looking at the recorded session today, but also people are in the mid of their careers and they wonder, wow, what are indeed some of the key competencies that become more and more important? And also for students, what kind of classes should I take actually if I think about the fast changing, work environments and future of work? Any thoughts on that?
So I think the answer is it needs to be a combination of digital and human skills. So that bionic concept, I think is very true and it will apply to every industry and every functional pillar in the organization. So technology will penetrate every area of our work. And there will be no roles that will not require digital skills, right? So, take marketing or HR or, learning, you have to have like good level of understanding of technology to be effective in any of the future roles. But I think what's even more true is that as technology advances and like certain processes get automated, the role of humans will be to focused on design and facilitation of different, conversations, so collaboration, things like collaboration, creative thinking, structured problem solving, things that machines will not learn as fast. So they will be very important and, will constitute, an advantage. Like if you as a person can be a good data scientist, but you can also be effective communicator and can work in cross-functional teams, and lead in an agile organization. So those are as critical as digital skills that are top of mind for all of us.
Yeah, thank you. So another question relates to the let's say the L&D profession in itself, Elena. So people are in the profession, or people are considering to move into L&D, HRD, leadership development. What kind of advice do you have for people in our profession when it comes to our own development? What are the key things we need to think about? Because we need to do learning differently moving forward. So what are the key things to consider?
Yeah, I think L&D profession is actually evolving very quickly, and it's becoming broader than it was before, and it will have a very different mandate. So as learning shifts from something that was more of a push to pull mode because everyone needs to learn, the role of the L&D function becomes more of an orchestrator, orchestrator of many different things in the organization. So you actually need to look into adjacencies and understand how the business works, how new agile models work, and be able to translate like the best practices of broader business operations into learning and development. So things like, I don't know, human-centered design will be a key element of how we think about designing new learning experiences, right? Working in cross-functional agile teams, like we're creating, programs for clients. It always involves a person from the topic side, like who has expertise in a specific topic, a learning designer, technology expert, somebody who has good project management skills. So it's not, a learning team and, that can do end-to-end work, right? It's actually a cross-functional team that works in an agile way. And then, understanding of technology. So I had to learn a bunch about new learning tech because you can't operate, you can't effectively design new solutions without understanding like what technology offers, right?
Yeah. No, thanks, Elena. So yeah, indeed. So a lot of changes actually, and for the profession, I think for us a huge need to continue upskill ourselves as well. One specific question about learning solutions. So think about onboarding at BCG, right? So typically, I bet that let's say the onboarding was a program that happened in an office or at an event. And it's likely now also done virtually. So can you say something about, digital onboarding? Does it work? Is it like, how do we build culture? How do we make sure that people really kind of get connected to the firm? And there's also something that I'm hearing from a number of people, graduates who recently joined organizations around the world. Everybody's getting a digital onboarding. But, how to do that? How to make that effective? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so consulting was probably like one area that had to completely, we were completely in person when it comes to our work, right? And then we had to completely shift online. And, I must say it's challenging, right? It is like the business is built on relationships, and everyone was, uncertain about how this can work going forward. But, in the absence of the in-person option, we did, a lot of experiments virtually. So we enroll new classes of consultants, you know, on an ongoing basis, I would say. And we host, you know, formal onboarding events, which kind of introduces people to the role and, you know, how they can, you know, start adapting to the company. Then we have in parallel, you know, social events that we host, you know, and those usually are geared towards specific topics or interests. So if you're interested in operations, you can, you know, jump on this type of, I don't know, virtual, I don't know, coffee chat or something like that. But then we also did a lot of one-on-one, you know, onboarding. So to actually make people welcome and make sure that you're really connecting. So instead of like having one person who have been responsible for recruiting and onboarding and could do it in large groups, right? We delegated. So a lot more people, senior people, started reaching out to junior people. So it went from having a small recruiting and onboarding team to having many more people involved and having many more one-on-one conversations, as opposed to just your regular onboarding process. I think the formal part of that you can still run virtually in the same sort of model, but then to make people truly comfortable, you need to have more one-on-one discussions built into that.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Elena. A question on leadership development. So kind of, you know, pre-COVID, you know, I asked a lot of people questions about, well, you know, are your leaders interested in, you know, attending virtual programs, participate in digital learning? And, you know, the answers I got typically on surveys is like, no, our leaders don't want to do that. They don't want to be, you know, using digital tools for learning. Now this has changed quite a bit. Can you say something about that yourself in terms of the experience with leaders attending virtual programs? What are some best practices to make sure that you attract them and retain them in virtual programs?
Yeah, so this is the topic that I'm less familiar with, just to be honest. I know at BCG, like we run a lot of leadership development workshops that were typically in-person events, and we replaced them with virtual roundtables. What I hear is we actually can engage more people and do these more often, and often with higher senior presence from the BCG side, because again, you don't need to collocate. And, you know, you can also, you know, attract a more interesting mix of people because everyone can plug to the same Zoom session, right? So the same notion of access applies here. But those are not like formal leadership development programs. So I think everyone will need to adjust and adapt. But again, there is, I think there are many benefits to this new normal that we will realize over time.
Yeah. It's what I've seen actually from a number of in a number of companies, and also from executive development programs at IE, but also at other schools. And you know, one key principle that's important is that you can only attract people and leaders for a program if they really believe that, you know, they will truly benefit from it. You know, that is something, by spending an hour in a virtual session, indeed, this will help me in my job today and tomorrow. So, and again, I can apply what I have learned, right? So it all starts with, you know, having topics that is on the top of mind of leaders and say, you know what, I need to do this because this will help me. I think everything starts actually with that.
That's very true. Like in the workshops that we ran over the last few months, we actually could reach out and say, hey, what would you like to discuss, right? And we tailored much better to what's top of mind for that specific group. Whereas if you're in person, you sort of kind of wait until you are in person to understand like what's top of mind for people. You're not always like running a survey, but now that boundary is much less, and you can collect feedback ahead of time and tailor much better.
Yeah. Thanks, Elena. Another question from Sana, also former, a candidate or participant of the international masterclass. Thank you, Sana. So she asked actually, if you reflect, Elena, on your clients, and I know they are in different industries, etc. But do you see an overall kind of and growing interest in learning and development and capability building? Our companies are saying now, wow, yeah, indeed, we have to do this, or any thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. I think the whole world is waking up to this challenge. And, of course, organizations have always been, focusing on talent development, and, the importance of that has been well known. But in the recent months, we have seen many more questions coming from client organizations around, upskilling of the entire workforce. Like, how do we solve this issue that over the next 10 years, we need to reskill 50% of our people? Like, the need for scalable solutions is much more pronounced, and it's coming to us, as opposed to like us telling clients, hey, you guys have to think about this because it will hit you 2 years down the road. We've seen organizations trying to figure it out for 30,000 people, 50,000 people, like where do I need, I don't know, 1 million people to get better understanding of AI? How do we do this, right? So these types of questions.
Yeah. Thanks, Elena. One more question on, also you mentioned in your presentation, the importance of a growth mindset for people. And as you know, I always talk about a number of, mindsets for lifelong learners. But, one of the key questions that people always ask me, like, Nick, but if people don't have per se a growth mindset, or if they don't, we offer a lot of training, a lot of digital learning is available, but guess what? They are not jumping on it. They are not moving. So what do organizations need to do to make sure that people become more interested in taking advantage of all the learning that's available through the organization, or externally, free through on the internet, or taking MOOCs?
Yeah,
a hard question, but it's
it's a hard question, especially for BCG, because I think by default we hire people with growth mindset, so we don't see a lot of people like, I don't care. But I do believe it comes down to culture, like having learning culture and having people around you who have growth mindset. So you need to have a critical mass of those people who can influence the others. And if you have somebody next to you who is always looking for, the next opportunity to learn, who is always suggesting something that is interesting for your role, it can be, I think, something that can be cascaded from the top. Like, if your leaders have growth mindset, then they can educate the next level down and the next level down. It's a gradual process. But it also can be, I think, reinforced through specific incentives. So at BCG, everyone can host a session on the topic of their expertise or interest. Right? And it's very easy to do, and it's well recognized, because when you do it, you have more pool for staffing on specific projects, or you're invited to be a trainer at a core skills program, which is prestigious. So it's not always like financial incentives or promotion, but it's recognition that drives people's interest in doing this.
Yeah, and Elena, one question in the chat on what you're sharing is, you know, does BCG have incentives, kind of rewards, you know, for learners, for people who are active taking courses or signing up, or, you know?
So we are not rewarded for learning for the sake of learning. I think this notion of growth mindset translates into where people, into performance, right? So it's connected. If you are learning, you will get opportunities to work on the most interesting topic or the next big digital case. We have a rotational program in our digital BCG kind of arm, where if you receive the certificate for a specific skill, then you have a priority to go and work on a next agile case, for example.
Yeah, yeah. Elena, we are at on top of the hour. This was very insightful, and thanks everybody for joining the session today, or if you've been listening to the recorded session. This was very insightful, fantastic to hear about your perspectives on learning and development, Elena. Thank you so much for all of this, and we will be in touch. Thanks everyone for dialing in. Hope seeing you at the next webinar with Elliot Macy. Wish you all the best. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.